What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Buzz. Robert Whittaker has stepped up to defend Khamzat Chimaev and Islam Makhachev after both faced backlash for what some fans called boring title-winning performances. Despite dominating from start to finish in their championship fights, the lack of a stoppage led parts of the MMA community to criticize the victor. On his latest podcast episode, Whittaker pushed back strongly against that narrative. He explained that fans often underestimate how difficult it is to completely shut down another world-class fighter for almost 25 minutes. According to Whittaker, when you are competing against champions or elite contenders, maintaining that level of control in every round is extraordinarily rare. He emphasized that this level of dominance is almost never seen in UFC history, especially at the championship level, where holding someone down for more than 20 minutes requires exceptional skill, strategy, and physical precision. Whittaker added that the grappling displayed by Islam and Khamzat is so high level that fighters could study their fights as tutorials. He pointed out that many critics fail to understand the technical details and the complexity involved in neutralizing an elite opponent. He also joked about people who question how such grappling would work in a street fight, saying that if someone can control you for 25 minutes in any scenario, the fight is already lost. As for what's next, Khamzat Chimaev is expected to return after April 20, 2026 in a major middleweight showdown against Nasruddin Imavov. Islam Makhachev, now the first Russian two-division UFC champion, awaits his next move. His future could involve Ilia Topuria or one of the top welterweight contenders such as Ian Garry or Kamaru Usman, depending on how the division develops. Before moving on to the next news, we have a quick request for you. We're always working to improve our content and truly value your support. If you could take a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon, it would mean a lot to us. That way, you'll never miss an update. Move on to another news. In a recent interview with a Russian outlet, Islam Makhachev discussed the possibility of returning to lightweight, the idea of a super fight with Ilia Topuria, and the contenders emerging for his next welterweight title defense. Makhachev made it clear that a bout with Topuria at 155 pounds is highly unlikely unless the UFC presents a major offer. He emphasized that he is no longer a young fighter, and the weight cut to lightweight has become significantly more taxing. Each cut affects his health, and dropping back down would require a substantial incentive from the promotion. Otherwise, he intends to continue competing at 170. When speaking about his next welterweight challenger, Makhachev said the division's landscape is finally beginning to take shape. He believes there are 3 or 4 legitimate contenders, and he expects the UFC to make a decision within the next 2 weeks. He also shared his thoughts on Ian Garry's recent performance at UFC Qatar, stating that Garry did not surprise him personally. However, if Garry managed to impress the UFC matchmakers, he could easily find himself next in line. Makhachev also addressed the situation surrounding Shavkat Rakhmonov. He pointed out that Rakhmonov has been sidelined for more than a year due to injuries, which makes it difficult to justify an immediate title shot. Still, Makhachev noted that if Rakhmonov returns healthy and the UFC chooses him as the next opponent, he has no issue accepting that fight. Move on to another news. Dana White has responded to the altercation between Khamzat Chimaev and Ian Garry at UFC Qatar after the incident dominated headline. What appeared at first to be a friendly exchange at the Fighter Hotel quickly escalated into a real physical confrontation. According to those who witnessed it, Ian Garry approached Chimaev from behind and grabbed him in a playful but overly forceful manner. The touch was far more physical than necessary, and the undefeated Chechen star did not appreciate it. As Garry walked away, Chimaev slapped him on the back in a way that seemed friendly on the surface but carried clear aggression. Garry turned around. Words were exchanged, and Chimaev pushed him while warning that he would mess him up. Security intervened immediately to prevent the situation from escalating any further. Dana White has now broken his silence on the incident, revealing that UFC staff and matchmakers are becoming increasingly frustrated with these hotel hallway run-ins. He noted that similar incidents continue to happen from event to event, with Chimaev finding himself at the center far too often. White also hinted that there was more chaos behind the scenes that the public has not yet heard about. According to him, something else occurred backstage involving the two fighters, though he did not provide specifics. Meanwhile, Ian Garry is coming off a major victory over Bilal Muhammad and has used every media opportunity to call out Islam Makhachev. Riding a 2-fight win streak over Sean Brady and Bilal, Garry believes he has earned the right to push for a title shot at welterweight. However, his confrontation with Chimaev has now put additional attention and scrutiny on his behavior before fight nights. When speaking about the altercation, Dana White admitted that the situation got out of control quickly. He said there was a lot of bad that happened behind the scenes and acknowledged that the UFC referee did not do a good enough job preventing the encounter. He added that matchmakers are not particularly fond of these incidents, especially when they disrupt event logistics and fighter safety. Move on to another news. Max Holloway has finally explained why he isn't jumping on the hype surrounding the historic UFC event planned at the White House, a card almost every fighter is begging to be part of. While the idea is monumental and the spotlight would be massive, Holloway says one thing matters above everything else: his family. The event is expected to allow only around 5,000 people, which means his family likely wouldn't be able to get seats. For Max, that is a deal breaker on an emotional level. He added that if the UFC asks him to fight there, he will, because it's a huge moment for the sport. But he made it clear he isn't desperate to be part of it like many others, emphasizing that family comes first. Holloway is coming off a huge victory over Dustin Poirier and is already targeting a rematch with Charles Oliveira. If that fight takes place, the winner will be pushed right back into the lightweight title conversation. Meanwhile, the champion's side of the division is becoming increasingly interesting. A showdown between Ilia Topuria and Arman Tsarukyan now looks far more realistic than it did just weeks ago. Tsarukyan picked up another strong win, and if Topuria returns in February as expected, many fans already consider Arman the clear #1 contender for the title. The timing seems perfect for that matchup. Holloway also shared his thoughts on the White House card expectations. He pointed out that there are currently no American UFC champions other than himself with the BMF title, which makes him a likely choice for the card. Still, not having his family close, especially after spending years earning the privilege of having them ringside, makes the idea far less appealing. For now, he's focused on healing his injury and hopes to return around March or April. If the UFC holds him until June, it would mark an unusually long layoff since his win over Poirier. To fans, the conversation now shifts to the division. What did you think of Arman Tsarukyan's win over Dan Hooker at UFC Qatar? Is he ready to challenge Ilia Topuria for the belt? And how did Ian Garry's victory over Bilal Muhammad impact the welterweight title picture? Would you like to see Garry take on Islam Makhachev next? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you stand. Move on to another news. Khamzat Chimaev has escalated his feud with Ian Garry, issuing a new threat following their intense backstage altercation at UFC Qatar. The tension began when Chimaev shoved Garry, accusing him of touching him in a way he felt was disrespectful. What appeared to be a brief physical exchange at the event has now spilled over onto social media. In a now-deleted tweet that was reposted by Championship Rounds on X, Chimaev continued to take aim at Garry. Although both fighters addressed the situation in their post-fight press conferences, it was clear that the incident was far from resolved for the undefeated middleweight champion. Chimaev wrote on his account, "White boy, you will not survive 1 minute in my hands," making it obvious that the bad blood between them is only intensifying. The confrontation began shortly after Garry approached Chimaev in what appeared to be a friendly manner, but made physical contact that Chimaev interpreted as overly aggressive. As Garry walked away, Chimaev slapped him on the back before the two exchanged heated words. Security intervened quickly to prevent the altercation from escalating further. Garry, coming off a major win and actively campaigning for a title shot, has been the center of attention all week. Despite his rise, the conflict with Chimaev has overshadowed much of the post-event discussion. The Irish welterweight maintained during his media appearance that he meant no disrespect, insisting his interaction was playful. However, Chimaev clearly didn't see it that way. With the rivalry now spilling into public statements and volatile online exchanges, many fans are wondering whether the UFC will capitalize on the drama or intervene to calm the situation. Either way, the tension between Chimaev and Garry has added a new layer of intensity to an already unpredictable welterweight division. Move on to another news. Darren Till has unleashed a fiery and emotional rant against Ian Garry following Garry's heated altercation with Khamzat Chimaev at UFC Qatar. Taking to X, Till acknowledged Garry's talent as a fighter, but harshly criticized his personality and public behavior, claiming it all feels manufactured and insincere. Till wrote that while Garry is undeniably skilled, he believes Garry might be the fakest human on earth, adding that his behavior is fake beyond all belief. Till said he has tried multiple times to give Garry the benefit of the doubt, even joking that he has sat alone in his bedroom trying to convince himself to like him. But according to Till, Garry's actions consistently reveal otherwise. He specifically pointed to Garry calling Chimaev a child during their confrontation. arguing that Gary's demeanor in that moment looked entirely forced. Till claimed that when Garry turned around during the altercation, it was clear he was afraid. He compared Khamzat's intensity and authenticity to his own, explaining that this is why he and Chimaev were once close friends. Till emphasized that when someone talks trash, he and Chimaev are the type of people who address it directly the moment they see that person, not perform for cameras. Till continued his criticism by calling Garry talented but so unlikable, pointing to Gary's harsh comments about Leon Edwards' recent performance as another example of unnecessary disrespect. He also claimed Garry had been kicked out of multiple gyms, including one where Till previously trained, alleging that Gary's attitude and behavior were to blame. Despite repeatedly stating that Garry is a good fighter and saying he genuinely tried to support him, Till ended his statement by calling Garry a proper fake, insisting that his personality is simply impossible to get behind. Move on to another news. Conor McGregor has officially announced his return after undergoing an intense psychedelic treatment in Mexico. Sharing a detailed message on X, McGregor explained that he recently met a team of forward-thinking doctors from Stanford University and participated in a series of advanced therapies designed to address deep trauma. He traveled to Tijuana, Mexico, where he underwent an ibogaine treatment at Ambio, the same facility featured in the newly released Netflix documentary In Waves and War. According to McGregor, the experience was powerful, overwhelming, and profoundly eye-opening. He described vivid visions in which he was shown his own potential death, how soon it could have occurred, and how devastating it would have been for his children. He said he saw himself from above as the event unfolded and later viewed the scene from inside a coffin. McGregor went on to describe a spiritual encounter, saying that God appeared to him in the Holy Trinity, accompanied by Jesus, Mary, and archangels. In his account, Jesus descended from marble steps in heaven and placed a crown upon him. He called the experience transformative, stating that his mind, heart, and soul felt healed. He revealed that he remained under the effects of the treatment for around 36 hours before finally resting. Upon waking, he felt like himself again, renewed, restored, and enlightened. McGregor said the treatment was extremely difficult but ultimately life-saving, not only for him but for his family. He expressed deep gratitude to everyone who has offered him motivation, support, encouragement, and prayers throughout his struggles. He said those prayers worked, and that he now feels reborn, carrying the innocence of a child with the knowledge of an adult. In closing, McGregor thanked his family, friends, fans, supporters, and his entire team, declaring that they did it together and hinting that the world is about to witness something special. He dedicated his recovery to God, promising to live according to his word with complete seriousness and appreciation for the blessing he believes he has received. He signed off the message as, "Your great-grandson, Conor McGregor." Move on to another news. Nate Diaz has made it clear that he does not consider Islam Makhachev the UFC's #1 pound-for-pound fighter. During a recent appearance on Neon's livestream alongside Jake Shields, Diaz was asked who he personally views as the best fighter in the UFC today. Despite Makhachev officially holding the top spot in the pound-for-pound rankings, Diaz dismissed the idea entirely, arguing that Islam hasn't been in the sport long enough and hasn't defeated opponents of the caliber required to earn such a title. Diaz claimed that Makhachev's resume doesn't compare to legendary fighters who built long, dominant careers. He described Islam as a boring fighter and suggested that Ilia Topuria is a far more complete, mixed martial artist. When Jake Shields brought up the question of who they believe truly deserves the #1 PURP position, Diaz immediately responded with John Jones, calling him an OG legend, whose accomplishments stand far above the rest. When asked directly about Islam, Diaz criticized the UFC's tendency to elevate fighters too quickly. He argued that Islam has only been at the top for a short period and that his victories don't match the legacy of past greats. Diaz referenced earlier eras in the sport, mentioning fighters like BJ Penn, who battled icons such as Matt Hughes and Georges St. Pierre. He emphasized that to be considered the best pound-for-pound fighter, an athlete needs a long, dominant run, filled with signature wins against elite competitors. Diaz continued by saying that he isn't hating, despite what fans may think, but simply pointing out what he sees as the truth. In his view, Islam has yet to show anything truly memorable that places him among the all-time greats. He noted that he often finds Islam's fights dull and lacking the excitement or dominance expected from someone ranked #1 in the world. For Diaz, the UFC's decision to place Makhachev at the top feels unjustified, especially when compared to proven champions who have delivered iconic moments throughout their careers. He concluded that fighters like Islam should not be mentioned in the same conversation as long-established legends until they build a resume worthy of such recognition.